Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our Q&A video. If you have not seen part 1, I will link it down below. As I said in part 1, you asked some amazing questions. I loved receiving your questions. I loved reading them, so thank you so much for asking them. And without further ado, let's get right into it. The first question is by Agatha, and Agatha wants to know, what are your goals for the next 5 years? And that is such a good question, Agatha. However, I am not normally somebody to set goals for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. Even if I was, with the kind of lifestyle my husband and I are currently living. So my husband is in the American Navy, which has us moving quite frequently, and often we don't know where we end up next. So if I was somebody to set goals, it might get frustrating, but of course it would still be possible. In fact, my husband is a planner, and I know it drives him nuts that I'm not, but I just have never been. For example, when I moved to the United States, one of the biggest life changes I have ever made, I did not plan that. I went on vacation and I stayed. So for the next 5 years, hopefully just to be healthy and happy and to make a small difference in this world. I would love to know some of your goals for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. If you want to share them down below. The next question is by Kids 90, and Kids is asking, can you take NMN when taking glutathione? So NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, is a supplement I have talked about a bunch on this channel. I will link some videos down below. I've also made a video on glutathione, which I will also link down below. But kids, unfortunately, I cannot make any recommendations like that. So I would have to say, please ask your doctor about this. But what I can tell you is that I personally take NMN and I also take glutathione. So hopefully that helps. I have another question on NMN, and this one is by Iron Maiden Fitness. And she's asking, I know you take NMN, but how about Metformin? And how would Metformin compare to a GLP-1 such as Ozempic? So Metformin as well as Ozempic are prescription drugs which are used to treat high blood sugar levels, such as in type 2 diabetes. Personally, I don't take Metformin nor Ozempic, but I do know that many people who like to take longevity supplements, such as nicotinamide mononucleotide, also take Metformin. There are actually quite a few studies on Metformin showing its many benefits as a longevity supplement. I do not think we have those studies on Ozempic. Metformin is a tablet which is taken daily or almost daily, versus Ozempic is a once weekly injection. But as far as how they compare, I don't think we know, because I don't think that we have those sort of studies on Ozempic as we have on Metformin. But personally, I don't take Metformin. I tend to have low blood sugar levels and I don't want to mess with that. But if any of you take Metformin, I would love to hear your experience with it if you want to share it down below. The next question is by Jay. And Jay says, hi friend. It is a very general question, one that might be difficult to answer. I would be curious to know, what do you appreciate most about Western Europe and most about the United States, if you had to choose just one aspect of each? He goes on to say, it is always interesting to hear the perspective of someone who has lived extensively in 2 regions of the world. So yes, Jay, that is a difficult question, especially since I only get to pick one aspect. And when I first read your question, I actually thought you were asking me what I think the biggest difference is between Western Europe and the United States. And as I was thinking about that, I actually realized that what I think the biggest difference is what at this point in my life, I actually appreciate most about each. Now, first of all, we can't throw all of Western Europe in one part. Personally, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in Italy, and currently we are living in France. And all 3 of those countries are very different. But what I feel these 3 countries in Western Europe I have lived in have in common is that there is a collective we, versus in the United States, there's an I. Now, growing up in Germany, this collective we drove me crazy. I did not feel I belonged. I did not agree with many of the things this collective we was supposed to agree on. And when I moved to the United States, I felt I could finally breathe. I felt I could finally be myself, just an individual. So, in my opinion, that is the biggest difference between the 3 countries in Western Europe I have lived in and the United States. This collective we versus this I. And at this part in my life, it is what, again, if I only get to pick one aspect, is what I appreciate the most about each. Because being part of this collective we, while it still drives me crazy many times, with this collective we comes a sense of belonging and a sense of security. Versus with this I comes a beautiful sense of freedom, which I still very much appreciate. But at least for myself, at times it can also feel lonely and as if there is no safety net. So still though, those are the aspects I appreciate most about, again, the 3 countries I have lived in, that there is this collective we. And when you do feel you belong, it can feel beautiful. Versus in the United States, there is this sense of freedom, which is also beautiful. And like I said, I still appreciate it very much. But at times, at least for myself, it can also feel lonely. So there are, of course, many differences and many things I appreciate about the countries I've lived in Western Europe, as well as the United States. But that is sort of what stuck out in my mind. I would love to know, if you have lived in different countries, what do you appreciate most about each of them? And what do you think the biggest differences are? Please share down below. I had a couple of questions on Paris. Karen Puma is asking, how are you liking your new place? Andy Steinweiser wants to know, how is Paris treating you? And Lorraine is asking, do you work in Paris? If yes, what do you do? So this is actually our second time living here in Paris. Before we moved here about 7 months ago, we lived in Naples, Italy for 3 years. And before that, we lived here in Paris for 2 years. When we moved here the first time, we kind of moved here with rose-colored glasses on, thinking we are moving to the city of lights and the city of love, and it is always going to be romantic and beautiful. Now, while Paris is gorgeous, it is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful city in the world. It, of course, also has its downfalls, like every place. And the first time around, we were not prepared for that. So the first time around, we actually didn't like it and we were ready to leave. This time, we are loving it. This time we knew what to expect. We knew what we would love about the city and what we wouldn't, and what to do about that. So this time, Paris is treating us well. Thank you for asking, Andy. I am actually thinking about making a video on what it is really like to live in Paris. If you would like to see it, let me know down below. But Karen, thank you for asking. We love our new place. We live in the 7th arrondissement, so actually the same district we lived in when we lived here last. And while our apartment last was gorgeous, we like this one even better. It has a really good feel to it, and it is very close to the park, to Champ de Mars. Now, I am not a city person. I need some sort of nature around me. So having Champ de Mars so close makes all the difference. Every morning, Sam and I get up early, run through the park. We're happy. We are loving it. So yes, this time around, we are loving living here in Paris, and we love our new place. And as far as working here, Lorraine, so when we lived here last, I am a certified personal trainer and a yoga teacher. When we lived here last, I taught yoga classes and I trained clients. I was actually quite busy and I loved it. I really miss it. But with COVID, first of all, things have changed in my field. And for me personally right now, I'm not quite comfortable yet having people breathe heavy into my face. I hope I will soon, because I really miss it. I love teaching yoga and I love training clients. But right now I'm not doing that. I'm just doing YouTube. So let's see. The next question is by Astrid Marrero. And Astrid wants to know, how do you stay so positive in these uncertain times? She goes on to say, lately I'm feeling a bit anxious and nervous with all this craziness going on in the world. Every time I watch the news, I feel helpless and my heart hurts. Astrid, first of all, I'm not always positive. I wish I could say I was, and for the most part I am, but I also at times feel anxious, helpless, and depressed. What I had to decide for myself quite a long time ago, and this is very simply put, is that I would rather be ignorant and happy than informed and depressed. Again, this is very simply put. I am not ignorant to what is going on in the world, but I had to decide quite a long time ago to set boundaries on how much and at what times I will allow myself to learn about the news. Now, I know this doesn't work for everybody, and back then when I made that decision, I thought I had to constantly be informed. And what that did to me is it made me incredibly anxious, depressed, hopeless, and I didn't want to go out in the world. So that is when I had to make that decision to set boundaries. And yes, the world is a crazy place right now, but it has been since its beginning. We just didn't know about it. But now we live in this time where we are constantly bombarded by all these horrible things that are happening in the world. But the thing is, there are just as many beautiful, if not more beautiful things happening in the world, but nobody talks about it. So for me, I have to set boundaries. When and how much of the news will I allow to get in? And then I also look at all the positive and beautiful things that have happened. And one of the things that is really helping me is you guys. Reading your comments just every day reminds me of how many beautiful people are living in this world who are kind for no other reason than they just are. And that really fills my heart and gives me positivity. So that is how I, for the most part, stay positive. I set my boundaries around how much and when to listen or read the news. And I try to focus on all the beautiful things that are happening in the world, because I know that there are just as many, if not more, beautiful things happening in the world than there are negative things happening in the world. And I also remind myself that unfortunately the world has always been crazy, but that now we have the luxury to constantly know about it. But I don't think it is doing us many favors. Now, I know, Astrid, when I read your comment, somebody actually commented below that they don't listen to the news and that works for them. And you said that doesn't work for you and that you do feel you have to be informed. And I know my decision to be ignorant and happy rather than informed and depressed is not going to work for everybody. But that is how I, for the most part, stay positive. I would love to know how some of you are dealing with all the stuff going on in the world. Does it depress you? Does it make you feel helpless? Now, if something is happening that is horrible and I know I can do something about it, then I will inform myself and I will do whatever is in my power to do something about it. But if all this stuff is happening and I can't do anything about it, then, like I said, I have to set my boundaries. So I would love to know how you guys are dealing with that. If you want to share it down below. The next question is by Farah, and Farah also lives here in Paris, and she had a great question. Farah says, I think this remains somewhat of a taboo here in France. Woman who decided not to have children. She goes on to say, I find this very sad. How do you feel about this? Also very sad, Farah. I didn't know it was a taboo here in France. I know it is in most of the world, but I did think France was a bit more modern. So for me personally, I knew at a very young age that I did not want children. Back then it was because I thought I couldn't possibly be a good mother with the example I was given. But as I grew older and healed a lot of that, I realized it just wasn't my calling to have children. So I made the decision to not have children. But I have been criticized for this decision quite a bit, especially by other women. I have been told I'm selfish. What is the point of life if you don't have children? Now, I admit that part of my decision to not have children is because I'm selfish. I could not imagine my life revolving around this little being, though it does revolve around my little dog. But I just could never imagine my life revolving around this little being. So that is partially selfish. But I do think it is a lot healthier to know that and to not have children than to just have them because that's just what we women do. So I think it's very sad that it remains a taboo, women deciding what they want to do with their bodies and their life, and that other women criticize us for those choices. I think that's very sad. I would love to know how you feel about it. I think if a woman wants to have children, that's beautiful. And if she doesn't, that is beautiful as well. And as far as the meaning of life, we all have to decide what that is for us. For me, I did not think having children was the meaning of life. If you feel that is the meaning of life, again, that's beautiful. I think that we women should support each other in our decisions. And we have been told long enough how we should feel, what we should do with our bodies. So that's how I feel about it. I think it's very sad. But like I said, I would love to know how you feel about it. Let us know down in the comments. Liquid 8 is asking, how do you motivate yourself to stay fit? She goes on to say, your body is goals. Thank you, that's very kind. Also, details on your weekly exercise regime. Do you incorporate cardio? So, Liquid 8, I just recently made a video on my weekly exercise routine. I will link it down below. But yes, I do incorporate cardio. I actually love running, and currently I'm running every other day. But as far as how I motivate myself, I think having somewhat of an addictive personality helps. Many of you know I was anorexic for quite a long time, and a big part of my disease was over-exercising. I exercised daily for hours and hours. Now, while that of course was not healthy, it did set a rhythm for me and made exercise a non-negotiable. So now that I am a lot healthier, exercise to me is a non-negotiable. I don't think about it. It's like brushing my teeth. Sometimes I don't feel like brushing my teeth, but I do it anyways. And same with exercise. It's a non-negotiable. Now, you mentioned body goals, and that was very sweet. But I do think that that can be something, if we have these certain body goals, that can be something that can keep us from working out in the long run. Because all of us have different genetics, right? And if we are thinking of this certain body we want to sculpt, it might never happen, and then we get frustrated and give up. So for me personally, while I used to exercise to be as skinny as possible, my motivation now is to keep this body, which I abused way too much and neglected way too much, to keep it as healthy and strong as possible for as long as I can. So the older I get, the more that is my motivation. I want my bones to be nice and strong. I want my muscles to be strong so I can move through life with hopefully very little aches and pains and injuries. So that is a big motivation for me as I get older. Not sculpting a certain body, but like I said, keeping those bones nice and strong, keeping my muscles nice and strong, keeping my posture upright, and then of course exercise helps my mind. I don't think anybody has ever said, I wish I wouldn't have worked out. We all know we feel better after we work out. So if I have a day where I just don't feel like exercising, I think about that. I know I will always feel better afterwards, and I think about all the benefits that come with exercising. And I also think having sort of the freedom around how long and how hard I'm going to work out. So in the past, I knew I had to work out for hours and hours and hours, and it had to be a hard workout. And my addictive personality got me through that. But now that I'm healthier, I am much kinder to myself. And I say, let's see, I'll do 5 minutes. Let's see how I feel. Now, in the back of my mind, I know I will go longer anyways. But just allowing myself that freedom really helps, because after 5 minutes, very likely I feel much better and I go, yeah, I can do another 5 and another 5. But if I tell myself, especially on a day where I don't want to work out, if I tell myself, I have to do an hour and it has to be at this intensity, I'm just going to hate it. So I allow myself that freedom. Let's see how I feel. And I think that really helps, because the kinder we are to ourselves, the more we want to do right. So making it a non-negotiable has really helped me. And that is just something that came from years and years, like I said, of not being healthy. But I think even if you're a very healthy person mentally, you can make it a non-negotiable, just like brushing our teeth, just like showering. There are many things we do on a daily basis we may or may not enjoy doing, but we do them anyways, and we know we feel better afterwards. So if you're somebody who doesn't enjoy exercise, make it a non-negotiable, but be kind to yourself. Just say, let me see how I feel. And like I said, also focusing on all the other things that come with exercise, aside from a certain body we want to sculpt or the calories we want to burn. Just thinking of all the health benefits that come with exercise. There are so many of them. And knowing that I will feel better, you will feel better after working out. Those things really help me. You can tell I can talk about this forever. Exercise is something I'm very passionate about, and that of course also helps with my motivation. So if you ever want me to make a whole video on it, I'll be happy to, and let me know down below. But hopefully this helped so far. So for me, making it a non-negotiable, thinking of all the beautiful benefits exercise brings with it, aside from the body it can possibly sculpt, and then also knowing I will always feel better afterwards, and allowing myself that freedom. Let's just see how I feel. Those things really help me and keep me motivated. I have a couple of skincare questions. The first one is by Annie G. And Annie wants to know, do you have any recommendations for face treatments without having to use filler that could help with smile lines? So Annie, I'm assuming you're talking about the lines right here that we get when we smile. Now, I recently had Sculptra and I made several videos on it. I will link them down below. But Sculptra is not filler. It is a biostimulator. It is polyl-lactic acid, but it does get injected under the skin, and then eventually it stimulates our body to make its own collagen and elastin. So while not a filler, it is still somewhat invasive, and I don't think that's what you're thinking about. But that has helped some with my smile lines. I basically did it because I'm quite sunken in here. But as far as things we can do at home, microneedling can help, since it is collagen induction therapy. Microneedling combined with LED light therapy. Also, radiofrequency promises to help with collagen and elastin production, so that can be helpful. But one thing we have to remember is that smile lines are dynamic lines, right? Every time we smile, we create them, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So it is going to be impossible to get rid of them. But those things, microneedling with LED light therapy, radiofrequency, those can be helpful in softening those lines. Also, of course, retinoids. I've talked about retinoids in the first part of this Q&A. Retinoids have great studies behind them, showing that they actually increase epidermal thickness, which in turn helps with lines and wrinkles. So retinoids can help. Sunscreen, of course, to prevent further collagen breakdown. So those are the things I can think about. If you can think of anything else, please share down below. Another skincare question comes from Kellyanne Ham. And Kellyanne says, I have questioned, can too many skincare products cause skin aging? That's a great question, Kellyanne. And I would say not necessarily too many skincare products. So in other words, I can put 17 different moisturizers on my skin and that's not going to cause aging, but too many aggressive or active ingredients, such as retinoids, such as certain forms of vitamin C, such as certain acids, alpha-hydroxy acids, beta-hydroxy acids. So things that can be somewhat irritating to the skin. And because of that irritation, can cause inflammation. So too many of those, I would say yes, can cause aging. So when using those sort of ingredients, we have to oftentimes work up to them. For example, when I started using retin A, now retin A is actually anti-inflammatory, but it can be somewhat aggressive and irritating until the skin gets used to it. So I started very slowly. Would I have used it every single night? I would have caused so much irritation that irritation would have caused inflammation, and that then can cause aging. So not too many skincare products, but too many active ingredients, which can be irritating. So I hope that helps. So those ingredients again would be retinoids, if the skin isn't ready, certain acids, ascorbic acid, alpha hydroxy acids, beta hydroxy acids, and also things that can cause some abrasion like physical scrubs. Those, I think, if overdone, can definitely cause aging. I think I have one more skincare question. Let me see. Denise from Yoga with Denise says, would you recommend Morpheus 8 and Sculptra for replacement of volume and overall glow? So Denise, I actually did not have Morpheus 8. So Morpheus 8 is radiofrequency microneedling. It is a certain device. I did have radiofrequency microneedling, but I had the Vivace device. And to my knowledge, the Morpheus 8 device is much more aggressive. So the Vivace, while I enjoyed the treatments, I honestly can't tell you that I saw a big difference. But I have seen people have the Morpheus 8 treatment and they loved it and they saw a big improvement. So I just personally can't talk about the Morpheus 8 treatment, but like I said, I have seen people have great results with it. Sculptra definitely for volume loss. So I have had 4 treatments now, and I would say after the 4th treatment, I actually finally saw a difference. I did make a video after my 3rd treatment, and there was a very, very small, very subtle difference. Now, while the difference is still very subtle, I do see a difference now. I do feel that my cheeks, while still sunken in, they are not as sunken in. And again, it has softened my smile lines. So Sculptra, if it is something you're thinking about, I would recommend. Now, you have to remember it is invasive and you have to go to somebody who knows what they are doing. But if you have all of that in mind, then yes, I would recommend Sculptra. But as far as Morpheus 8, unfortunately, I can't make any recommendations, or I can't tell you would it work or would it not work. For me, the Vivace, it didn't really make that much of a difference. So Sculptra for volume loss, yes. And as far as overall glow, I don't think the Sculptra will do much with that, but the radiofrequency microneedling definitely can. And if any of you had Morpheus 8, please share your experience down below. Let's see, Shirley Miller is asking, what is your favorite protein powder? Shirley, that's easy. I don't have one. I don't really use protein powder that much. Every once in a while, I will make a smoothie and then put a bit of protein powder in. And for that, I have one right now, and I can't even think of the brand, but I don't really like it. It tastes very chalky. So I have not found a favorite protein powder. If any of you have any recommendations, now personally I am plant-based, so if you have any plant-based recommendations for protein powders, surely I don't think you are. So any protein powders any of you love, please share them down below. The next question is by Yelena UC, and Yelena wants to know, I believe you mentioned taking thyroid medication, as I do. She goes on to say, do you space these meds from your estrogen cream? I know that estrogen can lower thyroid, so I was wondering how that works for you. So in the first part of this Q&A, I talked about the hormone replacement therapy I personally use. I use a bioidentical transdermal estrogen, progesterone, as well as testosterone. And yes, Yelena, I also use a thyroid medication. I use desiccated thyroid and have done so for about 20 years. So having been anorexic really messed with my endocrine system and I needed a lot of help. But because I use transdermal estrogen, I don't worry about my thyroid medication. Transdermal estrogen does not affect thyroid medication. But if you are a woman who takes internal estrogen in pills or capsules, and you're also being treated for hypothyroidism, so you take thyroid medication, then this internal estrogen might actually affect your thyroid medication and you might have to tweak it some. So if you take internal estrogen and also are treated for hypothyroidism, you might want to talk to your doctor. But since I personally use transdermal estrogen, I don't worry about it and I don't really space out my meds. I hope that helps. And I saved the most difficult question for last, and it is by Fueled by Plants. And she wants to know, I was wondering how you deal with your relationship with your mother. It seems that in the past, your relationship has not been good. Do you leave it in the past just to be friends now? Or do you not have a relationship? If so, is there guilt or something else? So I have not seen my mother since I was 24, so almost 30 years now. Now, my mother, while I loved her fiercely when I was a little girl, was not a good mother. She neglected and abused my sister and I, and she allowed a man in our life who sexually molested my sister and I. And it was a big part of why I got so sick. Now, I have done a ton of therapy on this, and many years ago, I forgave my mother because I realized that while she did not give me at all what I needed, it was all she could give me. And I moved on from it. Also, I realized that holding on to resentment and anger doesn't hurt anybody but us. So I forgave her and I let her know I forgave her. And just recently, actually about 2 years ago, we started talking via WhatsApp and we had a couple of FaceTime calls. And I could tell that I was very resistant of opening up more. And my mother kept asking when would I come to see her. And she kept telling me she loved me. And all of it felt quite strange to me. Because again, we haven't seen each other in almost 30 years. And while I have forgiven my mother, I haven't forgotten. And we never talked about any of the things that happened. So I felt for me to move on, I had to talk about it. I'm not the kind of person that fakes things very well. I have to talk about things. I don't hold a grudge, but I have to talk about things. And so my mother wasn't able to talk about it. And it got to the point where she almost started blaming me for the things that happened. There was a point in one of the conversations we recently had where she basically said that maybe it was my fault that this man molested me. And when she said that, I shut down. I really didn't know what to say to that. And I knew, of course, that nobody should ever be blamed for anything like that. And in that moment, it became very clear to me that I deserved better. And that until my mother was able to look at herself in the mirror and say, yes, I have made these mistakes. Now, we are human. We are entitled to make mistakes. But I do feel that we have to own our mistakes and, if necessary, say, I'm sorry. And unless my mother is willing to do that and able to do that, I decided I don't want her in my life. I will not let her blame me for these things that happened to me when I was this little. And she didn't protect me. So I told her that. I said, I need more from you. And unless you're able to give me that, you don't deserve me. So right now I don't have a relationship with my mother because I know she cannot give me that. And I'm not willing to give her anymore. And there is not guilt because I know that I deserve more than that. But what there is sadness. I feel very sad for her. I feel sad for her that she never got to witness the woman her daughter grew up to be. She never got to meet my husband, my dog. She is not part of my life. So for that, I feel very sad. But I know that this kind of sadness is the kind of sadness I would feel for any person going through the same situation. So I don't feel sad for her because she's my mother, but because she's a human being and she's lonely, and I find it very sad, but it's not guilt. So that's where I'm at the moment with my mother. We don't have a relationship. I cannot leave it in the past to be friends, because to me being friends is something very important. And a very, very important part of being friends is honesty. And my mother is not capable of giving me that honesty right now, or willing of giving me that honesty right now. And I feel I deserve that. So I hope that explains it. Now, in the past, I was embarrassed to talk about this. I feel that coming from a dysfunctional family, or I felt that coming from a dysfunctional family meant that I was dysfunctional, and that there was something wrong with me, and that it made me not lovable. But I now know that that is not true, and that many families are dysfunctional. And for me, I feel very, very fortunate. I have created a family of people who are not related to me, but people who love me and who I love and who I trust and who I feel safe with. And that is very important to me. So while I would like to have a relationship with my mother, I don't want a dishonest relationship with her. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for asking the question. It is a difficult one. And I do hope at some point, maybe my mother is able to say, listen, I know these things happened. I should have protected you. I'm sorry I blamed you. And if she's able to say that, I am open for a relationship. But right now I am keeping myself closed and protected. So again, I hope that makes sense. My battery is almost empty again, just like last time. And I think I have answered all the questions. If you have any more, please don't be shy, leave them down below. But thank you so much for asking these amazing questions. Thank you for all your responses after the last video. You guys are part of this family I created, that I feel loved by and that I love, and I'm so grateful and so appreciative of every single one of you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being part of my life. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Bye.